everyone, it's Luna, and today I wanted to make a video explaining why I believe in panentheism. So, as I've talked about in a lot of my videos before, I used to be very religious. I used to be just a regular theist who believed in God, and I also believed in Jesus and things like that. But now that I've left religion, it was confusing at first to figure out if I still believed in God or what my thoughts were about any kind of deity or deities that may exist or not exist. So I wanted to talk about how I came to panentheism and why it makes sense to me. Just before I go on, I want to talk about what panentheism actually means. So panentheism essentially is the idea that you are God and I am God and everyone is God. God is in nature and in animals and plants and bacteria and the planets, all of space and the universe. Everything that exists has God within it. Because God is not a person who's just up in the sky judging everybody and things like that. God is not as described in the Bible, but is actually a consciousness or an energy or something we call source a lot of the time, where we actually come from this consciousness. The consciousness that we have that animates our own brains and our bodies comes from this unified consciousness. Some people call it the collective consciousness or even the collective unconscious, because a lot of people within panentheism believe that it's actually our unconscious mind that's more attached to this source. And I subscribe to this idea as well. So essentially, everything has God in it. God is in all, but also above all. And the idea of this consciousness existing both in the physical world and outside of it is how we differentiate it from things like pantheism. Pantheism is just the belief that God is in everything. But in becoming the universe, God essentially wasn't above everything, it's just in everything. Whereas a panentheist believes that this consciousness existed before any physical matter existed, and it essentially thought the universe and all of physical matter into existence. So in that way, a panentheist is a monist, meaning they're the opposite of a dualist, where instead of saying, oh, there's the spiritual world and the physical world, or there's the dark and the light, or, this and that, a monist doesn't have a dualist mindset where there's this and then there's that. A monist says, well, what we see as the physical world is just a manifestation of this conscious mind or this collective unconscious, where it essentially thought the universe into existence. So one example of this is this consciousness is often attributed to a kind of light, whether that's literal or figurative. There's different theories about that, but there have actually been studies where, I think this was a study in 2021, where scientists were able to create matter with just light. And this is something that had even been predicted as a possibility all the way back to the 1930s. And they finally did it in 2021. It was done through colliding photons. It was a very interesting thing. And this just shows how the idea of a conscious light that existed before the universe did, or before any of the physical world existed, it would make sense as to how matter could be created from that. So I'm going to get into some more information, though, about the logic, the reason, and a little bit of science as to why I believe in panentheism. So, number one, science shows us that our spirits do exist. This is my perspective, and you're welcome to disagree, but to me, according to the first law of thermodynamics, it states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be altered in form. So, since everything in the universe vibrates, we know this, everything has frequency, everything has vibration, and the world essentially works in waves. So our thoughts are something that carry a vibration of their own. And from this, we can conclude that our consciousness is an energy that never dies. If our consciousness is an energy, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It's always existed and always will exist. So there's also the hard problem of consciousness. This is something you hear about in psychology and also in science, where scientists have trouble explaining how and why subjective experiences arise from physical processes in the brain. From a logical standpoint, an all-powerful personified God, if we're going from a religious point of view now, the idea of an all-powerful God that's a person could not exist. This is due to the fact that an all-powerful God couldn't create something, for example, that's so heavy that he couldn't pick it up. Something cannot be all-powerful. That idea would immediately cancel itself out because there's always going to be something that this being cannot do. So now back to the other side, talking about energy. Energy exists whether or not matter is present. So one day when the universe dies, energy will still be present because it can't be created or destroyed, as we said before. Therefore, we can conclude that energy of consciousness has always existed and will always exist. Often, this eternal consciousness is thought of as a type of light, as we mentioned before. And if you look into Bohmian mechanics, it talks about this more. David Bohm was someone who talked about the possibility of the universe and physical matter essentially being frozen light. So I would highly look into that because it totally goes along with what we talked about with the 2021 experiment where they created matter from light. So this all shows that our spirit or consciousness is part of a greater whole, which is totally what panentheism believes. A collective unconscious mind that's made of light that essentially thought the universe into existence. Almost like a lucid dream, for example. We have the power to create our own worlds totally from our thoughts when we sleep. When we dream, as long as we're able to be lucid during our dream, we can make it whatever we want. And this idea carries over very much into the idea of panentheism. There are also clues of this for other trance-like states we may be in. So during meditation, or during other altered states of consciousness, such as when you use psychedelics. Please don't do anything illegal or unsafe or anything like that. But during experiences like this, you can have a similar experience to when you're lucid dreaming. You're getting a lot of information kind of downloaded to your unconscious mind and things like that. So that's worth noting as well. Something also that I really enjoy talking about is when it comes to things like reincarnation, which not all panentheists believe in, but I feel like this is an important aspect of the existence of our spirits and the role that they play. So for over 20 years, the University of Virginia has been studying accounts of children who claim to remember past lives. And what's so interesting about this, and the reason it's been going on for over 20 years, is much of the time, and many books have been written about experiences like this. And the University of Virginia isn't the only one studying this, but there's many studies out there where the children are able to give accurate accounts of real people who lived and died. The children are able to often say how the person died, and it's accurate, who the person was, what their name was, where they lived, different things they liked and disliked, if they were married, if they had children, all these different details that the children would have no way of knowing. They never knew this person. They never learned about them in school. They never saw anything about them on TV. Their parents didn't tell them anything. The children had no way of knowing about these people. And they even give very graphic accounts of how they died in their past life, whereas these children are usually very young and wouldn't usually have been exposed to this level of violence in their life before, which is also very strange that they would know about someone dying that way. So this is yet another piece of evidence of our spirits existing outside of our bodies and going through multiple incarnations. So with the idea of panentheism, I believe that that can fit in so well with the idea of reincarnation, even though not all panentheists believe in reincarnation. Because I think that if you look at the panentheist, I guess you could say cosmology, from the standpoint of ancient religions and also esoteric mystery schools like Kabbalah and even like Theosophy, which is a bit more modern, or Gnosticism, when you look at it from those standpoints, Buddhists, Hindus, Jains, so many different Eastern religions have always believed, the oldest religions in the world, believed in reincarnation. And they also believed that at the end of the reincarnation cycle, you could become one with the divine, which is exactly what panentheists believe, that at the end of time, not only are all our spirits going to come back as one, but every bit of consciousness that makes up the physical world is going to come back as one as well. And then once it's had time to rest, it will all start again. So the collective consciousness will shatter apart into all the little intelligences that we are, like we are now, and then they'll all come back together again at the end of another cycle. So I think that's very interesting. And so you can probably see how reincarnation works with that, because the idea of reincarnation is essentially where you start out as a very small life form, like perhaps bacteria, then you work up to plant, then you work up to animal, and then eventually you're a more intelligent life form, whether that's a human or maybe an extraterrestrial, like on another planet. I'm someone who believes in star seeds as well, which is where you can reincarnate on different planets, whether that's like, I used to be on a planet from the Pleiades or something like that, and then I incarnated here, or after I incarnate here, I'll go and be on another planet way out yonder. So I think that it makes sense that our purpose in living, our purpose in our spirits breaking off from that consciousness, was because the consciousness can't just sit and talk to itself for eternity. That would be really boring. Can you imagine being the only conscious mind to exist? You're the only thing that exists. There's no matter around you. There's nothing to look at. It's just you as a mind. That'd be really boring. So the whole reason it split off was to experience itself, through all the different little reflections or aspects of reality, all interacting with one another. And that's us. And through living this life, and many lives, we gain all the experiences that we possibly can in order to gain knowledge, especially divine knowledge of who and what we really are. And from there, we evolve. We evolve in our consciousness, our knowledge, and our potential as a spirit or a consciousness. And that way we're able to really fully have this experience, as opposed to just sitting there as one mind and doing nothing. And I think this is really a beautiful process. It was something that was difficult for me to believe right after leaving religion. But as I studied more about ancient religions, especially Eastern ones, and I studied especially esotericism, it really started to make sense as to what these ancient cultures were talking about. And I do believe that this can fit in with science, it fits in with psychology, it fits in with so many things that are more concrete and factual. So I just thought I would share that today. And I do hope to get more into the science maybe in the future of panentheism, because there are other aspects to it, but that would be a much longer video. So I'll probably make a different one at some point. But I think that panentheism is essentially what people were talking about back in ancient times when they spoke of becoming enlightened, when you realize that you're just a micro of the macro, that you're one drop in the ocean, and that you're one little tiny shard from a giant mirror, and you are reflecting one little aspect of reality, and every other shard of this mirror is reflecting something different. And then you put them all together at the end of time, and then the truth is there with it reflected in this glass altogether. That's a very Kabbalistic idea, by the way, that I just mentioned. I think that makes so much more sense than just God just decided to put you on earth just because, and then you'll go to heaven if you're good and you go to hell if you're bad. So yeah, this makes so much more sense to me and gives me so much more meaning. And I do think that it's a lot more logical than just the very literalist interpretations of scripture that a lot of religions have. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope this makes sense. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about panentheism? And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to like this video, share it, get more eyeballs on it so that I can make more videos. And be sure and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell, because you won't always get notified when I make a new video unless you hit the bell. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.